Morning everyone, Steve Brown from Swansea Creatives, and this morning I'm here with Heather from HCHR, and we're just talking about one of my favourite topics actually, social media. And I think it actually, although I'm going to say social media, I'm actually thinking of the fact that we've all got computers in our offices these days with internet access, etc. And even I find it frustrating whereby, because of the nature of our work, we'll say to our staff, look, you're online, we're expecting you to go on Facebook, etc. and go onto websites, because that's your role in our business. Yes. But I still expect you to adhere to strict guidelines, etc., and not compromise my business and go out there doing personal stuff. Yes. So, and also the other things you hear is when people are talking on social media, like Facebook and places like that, and they're saying something negative about the company, and they don't understand the impact it has, because social media can go viral with flippant comments, etc. Yes. It's different than being on the pub and moaning about your boss and going online and saying the same thing. So how does a small business like myself, how do we deal with these sort of problems?
Okay, well, the simplest way is to, like you do with anything else in your business, is to determine what's important and what isn't. Right. And how you do that is you determine some policy or a rule. Again, right. When I say policy, I can hear people going switching off. The issue with having a policy is there's no good having a policy. I've seen them. They're not the most riveting of reads, these policy, but they've got important information in them. There's no good having them. They sit gathering dust on your mantelpiece. Yeah. What you need to do is make sure that the individual actually understands them. It becomes part of your business. Health and safety has been very good about this. We're all aware of health and safety legislation. Yes, we are, yeah. And the health and safety executive taken a real stand to say that it must be part of day-to-day management, and really looking towards confidentiality of information in your business should be part of day-to-day. Everybody should know that, but we're not born knowing that. Somebody needs to explain it to us. And we talked about other things earlier about induction and recruitment. It's all part of that. And if we have a policy, it needs to be explained. It needs to come to life. Right. It needs to mean something. But we do need the policy. We also need something in the contract to protect. The business needs to be protected. Yeah. The policy and the wording in the contract protects the business. I'll give you an example of the wording in the contract. You'll find in most contracts now, you should find some about the ability to monitor personal communication. Right. When you go to this is to do with the Human Rights Act. When you go to a petrol station, you'll see a video sign that says you're being videoed. Right. Yeah. That's because, according to the Human Rights Act, you have to be informed that you're being videoed. Yes. Now, back in the workplace, if an employee downloads porn, that's a criminal offence. Yes. Now, if we're going to, we suspect that, we want to investigate it. To investigate it, we need to look on their computer. Right. However, in the Human Rights Act, we need to inform them that we're going to look on the computer. So it's insanity, isn't it? So, yes. Well, I want to investigate it, I can't look at their computer. Insanity. The employment law is nonsense. Yeah. Well, what we need to do is to plan for it, and in the contract of employment, we say that we reserve the right to review your personal communications. Right. So once that's in the contract, we've got that in. That's to protect the individual. But the policies and procedures, you actually don't want to have any of these problems. You don't want to go to. No. You don't want to use us. You don't want to go to employment employment tribunals or go through policies and procedures. You actually want the people to perform properly and not break the rules. Right. So therefore, we need to actually communicate that to them. So in the induction, we'd want to start talking to people about some of the key rules. You'd have an employee handbook, I would recommend, that has all the policies and procedures.
So when you say handbook, we're not talking about I've got to go and get something printed by down the printers, an 80-page document. Can an employee handbook just be a couple of sheets of paper that have got the key elements in? What is an employee handbook? Because I'm sorry, when I was in Ford Motor Company, and the blue book, as we called it, was so long that you only kept it in your locker, and you pulled out when if you had a grievance, you go and try and find that rule to see whether it stuck up for you or not. Yeah.
You can do it in a couple of pages. You can do it in several hundred pages. Right. But I'm sorry to tell you that 80 pages is about right. I've got to say, for different sizes of organisations, but the legislation applies to the business irrespective of their size. How much you go into it and how you deal with it might make the 300
that's what gives you the problems later on when you haven't put enough forethought into it.
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot of policies. I would on average, I mean, you can. I think the core minimum you're looking at about six or eight policies, but in reality, to totally protect the business, you're looking more at having like something like 35 policies.
Right.
Now, of those 35 policies, they're not all needed all the time, and so you could use them for reference. So the managers need to know where they are and they can go for reference. The employees need to know where they are and they go for reference. But at induction, and in fact, sometimes off of the offer letter, it's good to have a disciplinary procedure going out with the offer documentation. So when somebody, for example, when somebody starts, they need to know what a gross misconduct is. So it's.
Because you're saying that, when you're saying gross misconduct, I think that's what I find the hardest bit when we're talking things like social media, is the fact that what is gross misconduct? And I'll give an example. It's like in my business, I'll say to my staff, if they're having a 10-minute break, a coffee break, and they want to do some personal stuff online that's not offensive, etc., I give them permission to do that. So what if I then find that they've been online for 2 hours doing personal stuff rather than business stuff when they're in business time? So how do I then say that's gross misconduct? You know?
Well, it isn't. That's misconduct.
Yes, right.
Because you've set the rule, and they've like a lot of people, they've pushed the boundaries.
Yes.
So it's about your responsibility to manage them and get them back. So it's an informal, like we talked about before, informal counselling. Why have they spent 2 hours when they know they should be doing it during their lunch break? Because you clearly delineated it, and it's all around fair cop, go and do it again. You know? But if they do it again, then it's a misconduct, and you take them through, and that the penalty for that is likely to be a first stage warning. Gross misconduct with regard to social media. Is a gross misconduct is something where the behaviour is so gross that the contract is severed from that point.
Right.
So that's where, if I was to thump you, then
would it be something like, so it's social media, so somebody went online on Twitter, Facebook and all the other different platforms and said something so derogatory about the business that it was actually affecting the business itself, the foundations of the business?
Indeed. This always presupposes, of course, that they are aware that they have a duty of confidentiality, which would have been communicated to them as part of the contract of employment, and also communicated in their induction, and that there's clauses in the contract in your policy that make reference to their behaviour outside work.
Right.
Because they've behaved that this was outside work. I was on. Have I breached my duty of confidentiality? So I think I mentioned before. It's about planning. Having the policies are there to protect the business. They won't work if they're not actually communicated to the individual. So there's key things. So the key things we need to communicate to people with social media is that what's personal use and what's business use. Right. And put a limit to either no use whatsoever. Now, and that's on everything. They bring the mobile phones, on the tablets, on the computer, on the work computers. So it's not just work computers; it's their own devices as well. So the rule is set for that. Once you've set that rule, what they can and can't do. If they were to breach that, the amount of usage, that's one thing. Then it's how are they using it? So defamation of the company. An individual might not actually understand. Oh God, a bad day. You had a really awful day. Boom, 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 and start writing on their Facebook some issues that have happened at work, not realising that they are potentially breaching data protection. They're talking about an individual. And divulging stuff about some other person. Now, that's data. Again, you've got data protection. We all have a responsibility. You should only use data from about an individual for a specific purpose. Right. Now, again, we'd have a clause in your contract with regard to that, and a policy. And again, that policy would need to be explained to the individual so that they would know. So what we're looking is prevention rather than cure. So at the beginning, so when you have an employee, they come and join you. They know, right? Well, I can't use any of my devices, but I can use my own devices at lunch break. I can't use the work computer.
I think what's come from here, if we just round this video up, I think what's become clear from here when we're talking about this hot topic now, social media, is the fact that you've got to have it in writing. You've got to have procedures there, and you've got to make sure it's fully communicated to your staff, because otherwise you leave yourself wide open to the fact that you didn't tell them, you didn't show them, and you didn't explain it to them.
Yes, wonderful.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So guys, this has been Steve Brown from Swansea Creatives. I've been here this morning with Heather from HCHR. We've been talking about social media in the workplace, and we'll see you all in the next video.